Today's episode of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a gift, or the newest hat to hit the market for your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home. Not in the United States? No worries there either, as they will ship to you international fans as well. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Thursday, July the 11th. I am your host, Mike Oliva, flying solo today. And yes, we are back after a mini break. There hasn't been a lot to talk about in the world of the Miami Dolphins. Not much going on. Everyone's sort of on Tua watch with his contract. If he's going to get one, will he not get one? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit on today's show. So with not much going on, I mean, you can only speculate on, the upcoming season so much before it just becomes repetitive and you're just talking about the same thing over and over again. Took a few weeks off here to get better. I was sick, so I had to get a little bit better and also just get some R&R, some rest in, relaxation over the holiday last week. But we're back here. As training camp's not that far away. So we're going to talk. I got a few topics I want to talk about on today's show. But before we get to any of that, I want to say thank you to everyone out there listening to us today here at the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I know there's a lot of podcast options out there, not just with the Miami Dolphins, but with true crime, music, sports in general, politics. And just want to say thank you for everyone who tunes in and listens. Also want to give a shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. Check that out if you're on Facebook. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, Podchaser, Audible, we're on all the podcasting platforms. Please be sure to subscribe because in the next couple weeks, as we get close to training camp, we're going to have shows each and every day of the week. We will have you covered like no other Miami Dolphins podcast when it comes to up-to-date news and stuff like that. So please be sure you are subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast, the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. All right, we got to talk about Tua here. Last show I did a few weeks back, I honestly thought he'd probably have a deal by now. I am shocked that this is going on as long as it is. And I think the Miami Dolphins are playing a very dangerous game of chicken here with their quarterback. The one time in history that the Miami Dolphins, who've passed out bad contract after bad contract after bad contract over the past 20 years to numerous people, including many bad contracts passed out by Chris Grier himself, this is the one time they're going to be penny wise and pound foolish. And it's just kind of baffling to me. And I don't care if you're out there listening, are a huge fan of Tua, or if you're someone who just doesn't like the kid, who doesn't think he's very good at his position. This has nothing to do with that. This is just mishandling a contract of the most important position on your team, which Miami is kind of doing right now. They have to give him a market deal. And I know there's been many reports out there, Jeff Darlington of ESPN says that the Dolphins aren't in the neighborhood of a market deal. He reported last week they got a little bit closer, but they're still not offering him a market deal. Why? This makes no sense. If you're Chris Grier, if you're Mike McDaniel, you must just copy the deal. Jacksonville gave Trevor Lawrence, hand it to Tua, and just give him that deal. And again, I don't know if this is going to work out in the long term. I don't know if Tua is going to live up to that type of deal, but let's see where this goes. This kid has improved year over year since he's been in Miami. He played every game last year, led him to the playoffs last year. And again, I don't know if he's going to take that next step. I don't know if he's going to take that next leap to win the AFC East, to win games in the playoffs, to lead us deep into a playoff run. I don't know, but he's shown enough to where let's find out. Give him a 5-year extension, which is really only about a 3 or 4 year extension. If it works out, great. If not, you fire McDaniel, you fire Grier, and you get rid of Tua and you move on. But because I think what they're doing, Miami, is it's just I don't even know what they're doing. Honestly, you look back at this franchise and you go, they haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. And, people talk about curses and jinxes. It's not that. It's poor decisions. And I think they're on the brink here making another poor decision, this time with the quarterback position. Say what you want about Tua. Since Marino, he's the best we've had. Now, does that mean – what does that mean? I don't know. But I wouldn't be so quick to kick him to the curb here or to shortchange him or to alienate him, which is what they're doing, and possibly chase him away. It's kind of head-scratching. It's baffling. It's like, just give this kid a market deal. Give him the Trevor Lawrence deal, and let's see where this goes. It's like the Miami Dolphins spent the 5th pick of the draft on this kid. And there's been so much talk about him. There's been all the injuries. There's been the concussions. There's been this, there's that. And Mike McDaniel's gone to bat for him in the press time and time again. Chris Grier has stuck up for him time and time again. And by trying to nickel and dime this kid, it makes you wonder if it was just lip service. Like they didn't really believe in the kid, because now when the rubber meets the road, they don't want to pay him. And it makes you wonder if they were just saying, the right things publicly, but they didn't even believe what they were saying. So, that has to cross your mind with how this is sort of playing out. And I know there's probably some of you out there listening going, well, these deals typically get done in July. Everyone calm down and just relax. It's going to get done in July. Well, if I'm Tua and if I'm his agent, and if I'd be pissed if I was told that, because here's the deal. He was in the 2020 draft. You know who else was in the 2020 draft? Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jaylen Hurts, and they got their deals done last year. And guess what? Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence, they didn't get their deals in July. They got them done prior to July this year. So this arbitrary time frame of July is nothing more than bullshit. And if I'm Tua and if I'm his agents, I would be annoyed if, we're in July, we're going to get this done. Why? You could have got this done in January, February, March, April, May. Why July? It's like nobody else had to wait till July. Guys are getting it last year. Guys have gotten it in May and June of this year. Why do I have to wait till July? Why me? And that's, what they're doing, and I don't even think they know they might know they're doing it. I have no idea. They're alienating this kid. And if they force Tua to hold out, first day of training camp, he doesn't show up because he's told by his agents, don't show up without a new deal. If he holds out, or if he does the sit-in where he shows up, he'll do the exercises. But when it's time for 7-on-7 drills, when it's time for the 11-on-11 drills, he's not going to participate. He's going to sit in the side and watch. If they force him to do that, if they force him to look like the bad guy in this, they're pretty much pushing this kid out the door. Yes, Miami can use the franchise tag on Tua next year, and they can use it on him again the year after. But a few things there. The franchise tag hurts the Dolphins long term, gives them no salary cap flexibility. It's a hard number, and it's going to make it very tough for them to maneuver things cap-wise. And B, if you play this game where you're going to nickel and dime him now, make him play out this year, then we're going to use the franchise tag, and maybe we'll use it twice. If Tua does continue to improve, if he leads the team to an AFC East championship, if he does win playoff games, if he does take them on a deep playoff run, essentially Tua is going to be mad. And his agents are going to be mad. They're going to feel slighted. And when the time comes, it might take a few years. You have to wait out a few franchise tags. Tua is going to tell the Dolphins. He'll tell Mr. Ross. And if Chris Grier is still around, he'll tell him too, go screw. I'll get my payday somewhere else from an organization that wants to pay me. Because that's what they're backing this kid into a corner to paint him to look like the bad guy if they cannot get him a long-term contract extension prior to training camp. And the way things are going right now, and from all the reports you see from Jeff Darlington, they don't seem close. Of course, that could change overnight, I guess, but it doesn't seem close. And here's the deal with Tua. Don't think he won't tell the Dolphins to go screw. Miami tried to replace him with Watson. They tried to replace him with Tom Brady, not once but twice. You can only be the nice guy for so long. And when everyone else who was picked around him got their payday a year early, and then you see guys, who are drafted after him, like Lawrence, like the next year get paid. And he's still sitting around going, why not me? When I'm healthy, I play every game. Granted, he's not the best quarterback in the league, but, just give him a market deal. Like, this is the easiest deal Chris Grier could ever get done. Just give him the market deal. Give him the same deal as Lawrence. Give him something close to Jared Goff. Give him something close between Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence, and give him one of those fair market deals. And I don't know why this is so hard. And again, I'm not the biggest Tua advocate. I think he's an okay quarterback. He's not awful. He's not a superstar. He's good. And in this league, you get a good quarterback surrounded with enough talent, have a smart head coach, have a solid defense, you can win. I wouldn't be, and again, you give him a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal, you're not giving him he's not going to be here forever. So even if he does fall on his face in 3 years or so, you move on from him, you move on from the head coach, move on from GM, and you start over because he's earned that. Again, even if you're not the biggest Tua's fan, he's earned that. So I don't get it. I really don't. And if the Dolphins are upset with what a market deal is these days, well, then they should have got off their asses in January, February, March, April, May, and done something then. Because the Trevor Lawrence deal wasn't the market deal then. So, yeah, I don't know. It's very frustrating to see. And again, I'm not the biggest Tua advocate. I like the kid. I have no problem with him being Miami's quarterback. I don't know. It's very frustrating to see because we've gone down the road so far with him at this point. We've been through the bad parts. We've been through the struggles with Flores. We've been through all the back and forth. And now to sort of like pinch pennies and not give him a long-term deal and maybe have to use a franchise tag. And if they have to use a franchise tag, it's going to make it tough to, keep guys like Holland and Jaylen Phillips. It's a frustrating situation. And I think if you're a fan of the Dolphins, it's really frustrating. If he doesn't have a contract by the start of training camp on July 23rd, I believe, it's going to be a media circus down there. And if he holds out or does a sit-in, this season is going to start off behind the 8 ball in a really bad way. So we'll keep monitoring it. Hopefully, I mean, look, this organization has let me down many times over the past 20 years. Many times. But if they bungle this, again, I don't care if you're a huge fan of Tua or if you're not a fan of Tua. If they screw this up, this goes to the top of the list. This would go to the top of the list. So we'll see what happens. I have to think they're going to get him a contract by the start of training camp. If not, by week 1 of the regular season. But even then, you're going to just make training camp just an utter mess. So we'll see what happens there. But I am shocked from the last time I did a podcast, which was a few weeks ago, like I said, sitting here on Thursday, July 11th, that nothing's done. I mean, it's absolutely baffling. And then you see people like Jeff Darlington say, I'm not as optimistic now as I was in the previous months, this, that, and the other. What are they doing? What, same old Dolphins. It really is. What are you doing? Get the deal done and get it behind you and focus on the 2024 season with a very talented roster, which you can actually, win something this year. But they bring it on themselves at times. They really do. Next topic, we got some Stephen Ross news. Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross is stepping down as chairman of Related Companies, which is a giant in the real estate industry. I know if you're a fan of the Dolphins, sports fan, you might not totally understand that. Related Companies is like a giant in the real estate industry. It's a global company, New York City, Saudi Arabia, all over the world, many countries, many big cities, big markets. It's something he built, I think in 1972, he founded it. And, that's where Ross made his money. And he stepped down as the chairman. He's still like the largest shareholder, so he's not out of the company completely. But by stepping down as a chairman, he's now going to lead his own, he's going to lead a new development firm to focus his attention on the South Florida market, specifically West Palm Beach, Florida. He's bought a lot of properties, both residential and commercial, in West Palm Beach, and now that's going to be the big part of his focus. Joe Shad of the Palm Beach Post had a great story. Ross, in a letter to colleagues, noted that he is now a full-time resident of Palm Beach and will spend most of his time on South Florida developments. He remains the single largest shareholder at Related Companies, but as he's now a bit older, he's not going to focus on the New York City, the overseas stuff. He wants to focus on West Palm Beach and South Florida. Ross said, I have a real passion for building companies, communities, and cities. It's why I started this company 52 years ago, and it's what fuels me to this day. Like I said, he built a company in 1972, and it's grown to include more than $60 billion. That's $60 billion in real estate assets, including the nearly complete Hudson Yards in New York, which is a huge project, which is a $25 billion project on the west side of Manhattan, probably the most expensive real estate in the world. And in a 2019 profile in the New York Magazine, one former city official called Mr. Ross the toughest developer I've ever had to deal with. When it comes to when it comes to football, Mr. Ross has made a share of mistakes. When it comes to real estate, this guy knows what he's doing. And now he's going to spend his time in West Palm Beach, Florida, and look to build up that area. He's taking a personal interest in the city per the article. And Mr. Ross, more time in South Florida now, West Palm Beach, Florida. So that's big news for him and his other line of work outside of being owner of the Miami Dolphins. Last topic I want to talk about is training camp battles. Training camp's not that far away. And, this is a good thing. And we've said this the past couple of years prior to training camp, specifically the last two. There's not many training camp battles for the Miami Dolphins. For who's going to be the third stringer, who's going to be the fourth stringer. Okay, you got those type of battles, but you can look at this roster and Miami's top 4 or 5 wide receivers. It's set. You got Waddle, you have Hill, you have Odell, you have River Craycraft, you have Braxton Berrios and Eric Uzakama. If there's 6, you got the 2 Washington kids. Maybe, if they only carry 5, then, probably River or Braxton, one won't be here. I mean, essentially what's going on there. Offensive line, you might not know who's going to start at right guard. You might not know who's going to start at left guard, but we know the players involved. It's Wynn, Aaron Brewer, Robert Jones, Austin Jackson, Armstead, Lester Cotton, Jack Driscoll, Lamb, Liam Eichenberg. We know the 9 or 10 offensive linemen who are going to make the team. Quarterback, Mike White, Skylar Thompson behind. 2 running back, Mostert, Achane, Jaylen Wright, Elk Ingold, the fullback. We know there's not many battles here for someone who's going to be, it's who's going to make this team or not. I mean, if you want to get tied up and if it's going to be Jody Fortson or Julian Hill's a third tight end, if that excites you, God bless you. You look at the secondary. You got Kader Kohu, Ramsey, Holland, Jordan Poyer, Kendall Fuller, Cam Smith, Marcus May, Elijah Campbell, Nick Needham. I mean, that's your secondary. Is the rookie Patrick McMorris going to steal a spot away from Elijah Campbell? If that excites you, great. But it's like you could take a pen right now, and you could probably come up with 50 of the 53 men who will make the Miami Dolphins roster. There's a couple open spots. Will Channing Tindall, will he win a roster spot this year? He's done nothing the first like that. Okay. Want to have that competition. Will it be Brandon Peely or, Isaiah Mack is like your third or fourth nose tackle? Okay. I mean, it's like this roster is set. There's not going to be any wholesale changes. After the final cuts are made at the end of August, first week of September, maybe you see the Dolphins, if there's like an offensive lineman cut, specifically a guard, they could possibly make a move there. But, this is the team. We know the team right now on July 11th. And I think the training camp battles, again, more for depth than anything. It's, I think the starters are kind of set in stone outside of right guard. I mean, the starters are going to be. So it's a training camp where, I know fans get excited anytime you see any type of real football on the field. Training camp comes. But it's also a camp to where the real competition is going to be for second or third string stuff. You kind of know the 20. Right now, we probably know 21 of the 22 guys who are going to start, which is a good thing. That means this team has a lot of talent. It means this team is kind of, set, at least with the first string, is kind of set, and everyone kind of knows their role. And, those years, go back to, you want to go back to 07 with Cam Cameron, or even Adam Gase's years, or even the first couple of years of Brian Flores. We go into camp, there'd be like 6 or 7 starting jobs open or 8 starting jobs open. And that's not good. When you go into camp and you got pretty much every starting job open, probably except for right guard, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. It means that this roster is talented, and it means that this team is ready to win. And we'll see where it goes here. This season, it should be a fun season. The whole thing with training camp is you want to get through it with no injuries, especially this team after all the injuries they went through last year. How they look in the joint practices, it matters. Does it matter that much? No. How they look in the preseason games matters nothing at all. You just want to get through training camp with no injuries. That's the most important thing. So it'll be here before we know it. We'll have a few shows here. I'll probably be back in the mix here doing a few shows a week now as we get closer to training camp. So I just wanted to touch base here and do a show real quick. Everyone, check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We got a bunch of new articles up there, some new videos. You will want to check that out. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and all those places at Dolphins Talk. Hope everyone had a nice holiday weekend last week. Everyone's enjoying their summer here before we get to the craziness of the NFL season. I will talk to you again after a while. Folks, please don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.